Perfect. So welcome to Basecamp 11. This is an initiative from the Starknet Foundation. We do this at the beginning of each cycle leading up to a big event. In this case, this one is leading up to Denver. That's going to happen next year in February because we have a whole onboarding pipeline for developers who want to join the ecosystem. And the starting point of the pipeline is Basecamp, where you're going to learn, all the fundamental knowledge and to be prepared to participate in the next stages of the onboarding that we're going to describe later. So more about Basecamp, as I mentioned, it's an initiative from the Starknet Foundation. This time is going to be a 4-week course. Sometimes the length changes depending on how much content we want to cover. It's going to be two weekly 2-hour sessions, and you have this chat, you have a Q&A, which, by the way, if you have a question, if you put in the Q&A, we won't miss it. If you put it in the chat, we might miss it depending on how fast the chat is actually active. You're also going to have some quiz. So at the end of each session, you're going to have a 5-question quiz just to solidify the knowledge and the things that we discussed in the session. But also you're going to have some homework. As I mentioned before, make sure you join the Starknet Discord server. In particular, there's a channel called Basecamp. That is the place we post announcements where you can ask questions to us or to other people learning with you as well, especially when it comes to homework. It's a great place to get also to meet peers. I think a lot of people actually have met through the chat of Basecamp and then met in real life in some other events. So that's pretty amusing to see when they actually meet in for real. And we also have a YouTube channel, the Starknet Foundation, where we post all these videos, the recordings. So this session is being recorded. And tomorrow, probably, I'm going to upload this video to the channel, and I'll share the link on Discord so you can rewatch it. Just keep in mind that the first video we upload is going to be just the raw recording, no editing. So it's going to be like an unlisted video. After the whole Basecamp ends, we're going to actually edit the videos and create like a proper public playlist for people who didn't have a chance to join Basecamp Live, so you can just watch it later. As I mentioned, we have 4 sessions. So the numbering here is wrong. Let me fix here 4 because the link, I'm in the wrong place. Give me 1 second, so make sure that I'm keeping this updated. Session, this one, 4, okay. Yeah, we have 4 sessions. So the fundamental session, which is today, next week, we're going to talk about smart contracts that Okai is going to be leading that session. Then we're going to be talking about testing, how to test a smart contract with Thomas. And the last session is going to be about building the front end of your Starknet app. It's going to be led by Nestor. And we have here all the teachers and the teacher assistants. So that's me, David Barreto. You can find me at Barreto David on X and also Telegram. We have here Okai. Maybe Okai, if you can introduce yourself a little bit. Okai, you still there?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
here. So yeah, hi everyone. Okay, I'm Otuebe. Actually, I'm a previous member of the Basecamp, so I took a Basecamp 8 for the first time, and I got onboarded into the Starknet ecosystem about a year ago. I've been, active in, multiple different events, and I contributed to the Cairo book, and currently, building a startup, on-chain game startup on Starknet. And yeah, that's about me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Okay, I will be teaching the next session about building a creating a smart contract on Starknet. Then we have Nestor Bonilla. He's the one teaching the front-end session. By the way, you have there the link to their socials, to their X profile. Then we have Thomas Butler. He's going to be teaching the testing session. That's week 3. And we have Casey Westcott as a teacher assistant. So maybe Casey, if you can introduce yourself to the students.
Hey, happy to be here, Casey Westcott. I've been in the Starknet community dang near since its kind of origin point, I was curious about generative music and generative art, and that got me into developing using Cairo. And since then, I've gone on to do things like build games, build generative music libraries on Cairo, as well as score a number of video games that are on the Starknet platform.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey. So Casey will be also helping us in other sessions with your questions as well. Perfect. So I mentioned that this is part of a journey, right? That starts with Basecamp. And this Basecamp is going to run up until December 18th. That's going to be the last session. You're going to have a few more days to submit the homework, so it's not going to be the final date. But then we have a hackathon coming up called the Build Box that's going to start on January 6th to January 19th, obviously, of next year. So that's where you actually put in practice what you've learned on Basecamp. There's another hackathon, but this time focused on open source or contributing to open source projects, and that's called the Only Dust Hack. This will be the number 11th. It's only from January 22nd to February 2nd. So BuildBox is for you to build your project with your friends. OD Hack is to actually contribute to open source and actually get paid in the process as well. So it feels very good to contribute to those projects. And this all leads to the main event, which is going to be at Denver. We're going to have a hacker house. So we're going to select the best people, especially among those of you who graduate and participate in the hackathon, to be invited to continue working on your project. And we pay accommodation, we pay for the food. So you get to experience, I think it's like almost like a week of just building nonstop with a lot of your fellow Basecamp participants or friends in the ecosystem. Justin is asking, is there OD Hack in December? Yes, there's an OD Hack every month. I'm just mentioning OD Hack 11 because that's the one that's going to happen after Basecamp ends. But there's one running actually right now if you want to participate.
In fact, I'm running a couple projects on that OD hackathon. They're happening all of the time, and I invite you to go to the site, get comfortable with it, and there's so much work that you can take on there. So I can point you in that direction if you need to reach out or are looking for opportunities in that area. Plenty of things to do.
Yeah, I can show you Only Dust because people sometimes ask you, what is the best way to get a job in the ecosystem? And I tell them, hey, you have to put yourself out there, you have to contribute, and Only Dust is a great place to show your skills and people to get to know you as well. So if you go to Only Dust, you see here basically all the projects. I will have to go to app. I'll have to sign in. Can I with this GitHub? Let me see. Yes. Projects. So you can see all the projects that you can contribute to. I don't know, let's take this one, Scaffold. And so you can submit some PRs, there might be some issues open, people looking for help. And as I mentioned, you get actually paid for your contribution. So it's a great place to showcase your skills and also make some money on the side by supporting the open source community on Starknet. And the hackathon, if you go to hackathons here, you're gonna see that there's one running right now, OD Hack number 10. So you can actually join that one right now, but obviously it's best when you actually go through and learn some of the basics of Cairo and Starknet before trying to contribute to open source projects. But it's one every month, right? You can see many of them has happened. The one that I was highlighting is OD Hack 11th, just the one that's gonna happen in January. Okay. All right. So Basecamp is going to have some graduation requirements, and that is going to be based on points. So we're going to have quizzes, as I mentioned, at the end of each session. We're going to have a short quiz of 5 questions. That will give you 1 point for each question you answer correctly. The questions are not meant to be tricky. I just meant as a way to solidify the knowledge what you learned in the session. So you can collect up to 20 points just in quizzes, 1 per session, 4 sessions. Then we're going to have a homework, which is basically to complete the same counter app that we're going to build live with you. So make sure that you code along or you do it on your own. And you will have to publish your code to repo, make the repo public so we can take a look. And you will need to deploy that smart contract to testnet and provide the address as well. So if you do those things, you will get 20 more points toward graduation. And finally, completing Starlinks will give you another 20 points. And I think Starlink is an amazing way to actually learn Cairo in a dynamic tutorial. So if I open Starlinks, this is how it looks like. It's a bunch of challenges, like you see to the right, say what you need to complete. Maybe this be one that I haven't finished. Anyway, each one will have a different challenge. And if you complete successfully, you will have to get to the end and you will get like a completion badge that we are able to verify with your GitHub handle. So make sure that you complete Starlinks. You can do that anytime from now until Basecamp ends, but make sure that at the end of Basecamp, you have Starlinks completed, so you get this extra 20 points for graduation. Let me see if there's any question. Okay. So saying, I think we won't be OD hack on December. The ongoing right now is the OD hack 10, but we can always contribute even if there's no OD hack. Yes, that's correct. You can always continue to only dust, even if there's not an OD hack happening at the time. So it's not contingent on an OD hack happening. Perfect. So that's the way you can score points. So the question is how many points you need to graduate. All right. So if you only want to attend, like maybe you're not a developer, you don't want to do the coding part. If you attend at least 25% of the time of the live classes, you will get a badge, in this case, a SPOC, that will claim that you are a Basecamp attendee, right? You might not be a graduate, but you're an attendee. Now, to become a graduate and get the SPOC that certifies that you're a graduate, you will have to attend at least half of the live classes and score at least 30 points out of the 60 points, right? So half of the total points. And to actually get to be a graduate with honors or a cum laude graduate, you will have to not only attend half of the time of the live classes, but score 48 points, which is like about 80% of the total points you can collect from what I described here, right? Joseph is asking, where do they send the assignments? So the homework is gonna be just coding along with us. Make sure that you build the same app we're building and then submit. We're gonna give you a form at the very end, session 4. So you can submit the URL of your public GitHub repo and the address on the Starknet testnet where you deploy that one so we can verify. And the Starlinks, you don't have to do anything because you will need to sign up with your GitHub account, which would you provide that GitHub account when you register to Basecamp so we can compare who completed Starlinks. Because on the Starlinks, if you go to Starlinks, I think it's graduates, we can see the list of all the GitHub handles of people who completed. So that's how can we check that you actually completed Starlinks. Okay, and the rest is the quizzes, just they only happen live. So at the end of the session, make sure to answer the quizzes correctly. Cool. Any question about graduation requirements before we move on and we actually start the content for session 1? Okay. No questions apparently. Let's move on. Okay, so now with all the introduction out of the way, we can now start actually the fundamentals section of this class. So in this session, we're going to cover why Cairo, why Starknet. We're going to have a short break, 10 minutes. We're going to move on to to smart wallets. I forgot to mention here that we're going to do a little live coding. We're going to have the quiz, five questions. Let me put it here so I don't forget. 5 dev setup. Just because in preparation for session 2, we're going to make sure that you have the developer setup ready to go. So when Okai takes over next week, you can just start coding along. We don't have to worry to do the setup again. So that's what we're going to do today. Okay, a lot of terms in this slide that you might have heard, at least the Starknet if you're here, but there are other related terms that it's better to clarify. We go any further. The first one is, you have your Starkware, you have a StarkX, you have a Starknet, and you have the Starknet Foundation. So the question is, what's the difference between all of them? So first of all, Starkware is actually a company, a for-profit company, and they are the one who develop the Starknet and all the technologies that power Starknet. They're also the pioneers in the research and the cryptography that powers the ZK Starks as well. So right now they are the one who maintain, for the most part, the technology behind Starknet and manages, I think, most of the nodes of the network while we work towards decentralizing the system. Deepankar is raising the hand. Maybe you want to ask a question. I'm going to give you a chance to talk. Deepankar, you have any question? Oh, okay. No question. So disable talking. Cool. So, okay, Starknet is the company. Then you have a StarkX, and a StarkX was like the first approach or the first time that Starknet tried to put into practice the technology they developed, this ZK, the zero knowledge proof or ZK Starks. And they came up with this system, which is considered to be a layer 2 as well, but it's considered to be a Validium. I'm not going to go too deep into the nuances of a Validium and a rollup. Just I want you to bring home that a StarkX is not a system where you can go and deploy your smart contracts or just do things the way you want it. It's a permission system that if you want to use it, you will have to get into some contract agreement with the Starkware, and they will give you access to the system, to some REST APIs. It has some fixed capabilities like trading tokens or minting tokens. But as I mentioned, it uses some of the same technologies that Starknet uses, but it was like the first product that Starknet created out of the technology they developed. Now, the big one, or the big focus of this is going to be Starknet. And a Starknet is called a layer 2 rollup, which is permissionless. As you know, you will be able to deploy any code you want using the smart contracts. You don't have to ask anyone for permission. Anyone can use it. So this is where the focus of Starknet and the community really is, because Starknet is the one that is permissionless, but StarkX still exists and serves some clients, but I expect that over time they will all migrate in some form or another to Starknet directly. And then finally, you have the Starknet Foundation, which is the organization that I work for. And the foundation is a non-profit organization because its goal is just to grow the Starknet ecosystem. And we do that through these educational initiatives. So we bring more developers. We do that through grants to support people who want to teach. For example, Okai, he organized also a Basecamp for his own community in the past. We give them grants, we support them. But also we give grants to developers who want to build their project. We have different type of grants, seed grants, core grants. So that's our goal, right? To grow the ecosystem and also to help in the process of decentralizing the governance and also the infrastructure, right? Because right now Starkware is like the main entity doing things, but we want that over time, Starkware to become just one of many entities building and developing Starknet. So that's our role. Any question about this nomenclature? All good? Okay. Lower hand. Okay. So one feature of a Starknet is that we have, oh, there's a question. Brian asking, when you get a grant, are those mainly used to bring more people on board or just to cover your living expenses so you can work on it full time? I mean, the idea of the grant is to have applications that are going to attract more users to the ecosystem, right? How you want to use that money, that's up to you. The amount is fixed. In seed grant, we give people up to $25,000. It could be less if the project is not maybe that developed. You can find more information if you go to Starknet grants. You can find all the different grants. I'm going to put it in chat. Starknet grants. And you can see that there's a grant for different stages of the project, right? At the very beginning, you have seed grants. When you're more closer to get to mainnet or production, you have growth grants. And then if you are, I think, into the gaming ecosystem, you have some rebates on the fees. So you check out this page and see what applies for you. There's also grants for people who want to teach, right? So want to organize maybe a Basecamp cohort. So I'm going to put that link as well. Maybe in the meantime, have you, Casey or Kai, been recipients of a grant that you can talk about the experience?
Yeah, the seed grant, I applied for that or after when I was working as an intern at Nethermind. And yeah, it was pretty smooth. I put in the application about 3 weeks later, I got a response. And yeah, I had to kind of like do a KYC for my business. And yeah, I received the grant after that.
Awesome. Casey?
I'm in the process of applying for a couple of projects that I'm working on right now. I've got multiple friends that have applied. The process is very smooth. The foundation is really approachable, and they're really keen on getting some cool apps. So if you have ideas, don't hesitate to bring them to the table and start working on them, because it's a really great opportunity to fund your vision.
Romain has the hand raised, so let's give him the microphone so he can ask a question. Romain, do you have any questions? You can just unmute yourself and ask. Favor is asking, do you need an MVP to apply for the seed grant? It is let's say expected you have at least a proof of concept, something that you can show that you have the idea mature enough to be worthwhile to support you with a grant. But I wouldn't say it's a hard requirement. It depends on the project that you want to do. For example, if you are thinking about some infrastructure, it's harder to have an MVP or a POC. But the further you are along with the idea, the more likely is that you're gonna get actually the support you need to make it a reality. And finally, I have here on screen, and I put the link on the chat. If you're more inclined to teaching, we have a grant for people who want to organize a course like this one, but for the community, maybe in a different language, maybe in a different time zone. We have grants up to $5,000 to organize a community grant, as we call it. And you can see all the process here. And Okai can also, he actually organized, I think, 2 community Basecamp grants, community Basecamps. And now he's actually taking part of the Basecamp that we organized at the foundation. Okay, now back to Joseph. Do you have a question? You have your hand raised. Let me know if you want to talk. I can give you the microphone. Meantime. Okay, so I was mentioning that one feature of Starknet is that we have our own programming language that is called Cairo. And at the beginning, people were wondering, why did we decide to create our own language? Why didn't we go with Solidity? What's wrong with that? Like, why did we bother? Because it's not easy to develop a whole new language and the whole tooling around the language. But there's a very good reason for it. And I'd like to explain this reasoning with an example, with a story. Imagine you're the head of a space exploration agency of a small country, and your goal is to send a spacecraft to Mars, okay? To do that, you will have to calculate some important variables in order to save as much fuel as possible, because that will make the program cheaper. You will have to calculate what is the best launch window and what is the best trajectory to get there. So what you do is that you go to your engineering team, say, hey, can you create the program or the algorithm that was you're gonna calculate those 2 variables for us? And maybe they go and say, yeah, sure, we're gonna use something like Rust. We're gonna create a program, a very high performance language, and we're gonna make sure that we get the answers. So they actually come up with the program written, could be in Rust or in C++, just pick your favorite high performance language. But there's an issue, right? These computations are extremely complex. So if you try to run it in a regular computer, maybe it's not going to happen. You need a lot of power to actually get those answers in a relatively short time. So you need a supercomputer to actually do this. The issue is that, you're in a small country, you don't have access to this supercomputer. The only other country actually accepted to collaborate with you and let them use their supercomputer to run your code, but they are a rival country, right? But they say, hey, we can help you. So say, okay, well, I don't have any option. Sure. I'm going to give you my program. You're going to execute it for us. And when you have the answer, just tell us what it is. But at this point, you have an issue, right? How do you know that that result is the actual result, that this is the actual output of your program? It could happen that the supercomputer maybe malfunction just a little bit, just a bit flipped in the process. Maybe the answer is off by a few degrees or whatever. Just enough to, to completely miss Mars and the mission is a failure. Or even worse, what about if that is a rival country? What if the rival spy agency actually sabotage and tamper with the execution just with the purpose to derail your project? You just don't know, right? You only have the result. You have no way of knowing if that result is correct. The only way you can know is basically talk to another rival country that they have a supercomputer, execute that, let's say, independently, and compare results. But then you have to think about collision. Oh, these 2 countries are gonna get in, they're gonna try to screw me. They're gonna do the same thing together, so I can be duped into thinking that it's the right answer. So you go to a third country and a fourth and a fifth. But you imagine how inefficient, how much time consuming that will be just to have enough samples and compare them to see that it is correct, which is essentially how a blockchain like Ethereum works. But in this simple scenario, you cannot know if that answer is correct. Now, rewind this whole discussion, and now let's assume that the engineering team developed the code or the algorithm using Cairo instead of Rust or C++. So what happens now is that you provide the program to the rival country, they execute it, but then when they come back to you, not only they give the result, they give you a cryptographic proof that attests to the integrity of that computation. You can take that proof, and that is small enough that you can verify it on any computer. It could be your laptop, could be your cell phone. Even though the underlying computation requires a supercomputer, the verification of the proof is very cheap. And that proof, if the supercomputer even failed because there was a hardware issue or a software issue, or if someone tried to tamper with the execution, that proof will tell you right away. So the proof will become invalid in any of those cases. There's no way for the rival country to give you a wrong result and give you a proof that will pass your verification, right? That is the beauty of the math behind systems like Starknet, and by extension, a lot of validity rollups. So as a corollary, what this technology and what Cairo allows you is that a regular computer, in this case, like this laptop, for example, is able to keep a supercomputer honest, because if they cheat, you will know it right away. And that is part of the math of the validity proof. So some of the features of the language is that it enables what's called verifiable computation. And that is very specific to Cairo, right? You cannot do that with Rust. You cannot derive a cryptographic proof attesting to the computation in Rust or in C++ or any other language. You can only do it in Cairo or in a language like, what is the other language that does this? Circum, which is a much more lower language for very simple use cases. Cairo is for any use cases. It's a very high level Turing complete language. Of course, the Cairo language runs on top of its own virtual machine. It doesn't run on top of the Ethereum virtual machine. It runs on the Cairo virtual machine, or the Cairo VM. The syntax is inspired by Rust. It's not exactly the same. It's very similar. There's some small differences. It's not Rust. It's just the syntax is similar because the compiler is completely different. But if you know Rust, it will be very easy for you to pick up Cairo. And if you learn Cairo, on the other hand, is you're kind of learning Rust on the side. They have similar ownership model to Rust, so if you know that, it will be easy to transfer to Cairo. You're gonna have it's a strongly typed language. It has traits instead of inheritance. It uses macros for extending the capabilities of the language called meta programming. And very interesting, it can be used outside of Starknet. So you can use Cairo on its own to create just general purpose language that might not be blockchain at all, but you will still have those properties. You can still derive this validity proof out of the execution. And for me, the best part of all this technology is that you can take advantage of this new breed of technology called zero knowledge proofs without you needing to know anything about ZK or zero knowledge, right? Cairo does a very good job at abstracting away all those complexities, so you can just focus on the logic on your code and forget about all the complexity underneath. Great. Any question before we move on to Starknet itself? Okay, no questions. Perfect. So we talk about Cairo, why we develop our own programming language, what's the purpose? So another question is, why did we develop a whole blockchain around this concept of zero knowledge proof in Cairo? So let's talk about how a regular blockchain actually works. In this case, let's think about Ethereum. So in Ethereum, every time, let's say you execute transactions because you interact with a DeFi protocol or with some game, these transactions are eventually bundled into a block, right? And some node in the network is going to say, okay, I'm going to execute all these transactions that users created in the block. I'm going to process them. I'm going to propose a new global state for the blockchain, for the Ethereum network or for any other system that works similarly. Let's say that this new global state is 42, just to make it very simple, right? So the rest of the Ethereum nodes, these thousands of nodes, they're just not going to take their word for it. What they're going to do, they're going to re-execute the same transactions in the block independently, all of them, and just verify that they actually get to the same global state, in this case, 42, right? And as long as at least half of them are honest and they're actually trying to get to the correct result, the system will be robust. Because if the block producer is trying to cheat, say, oh, you know what, the result is 100 instead of 42, the validators who are honest will be able to discover that, hey, no, the result is actually 42, so you're actually trying to cheat, and you get a penalty for that. Okay, so that is the consensus protocol of Ethereum that you will not see in many other blockchains as well, right? So you can see that this is very robust, but it has an issue. Every single transaction, even a simple one, it has to be replicated independently in tens of thousands of computers around the world. And as a system, that is a little inefficient, right? The case Starknet works a little bit different. In a Starknet, it also process transactions into blocks and proposes a new state. But now, not only they give you what is the new state, it also gives you the validity proof. Here's the proof that this actually is the new state of the network. So now all the nodes, in this case of Ethereum, they don't have to re-execute all the transactions in the block. They only have to verify that cryptographic proof. And that verification is only a fraction of the underlying effort of re-executing all the transactions in the block. So you can see that, at least intuitively, this system is way more efficient because the work that the whole global machine has to do is very small compared to basically the work that the Starknet node had to do. So in a way, you only execute transactions once, but you verify everywhere. So that is how Starknet manages to scale, because you don't have to duplicate the work over and over in tens of thousands of computers, just the verification of the cryptographic proof. Now the question is, how small is the effort of this verification of the proof compared to the execution of all the transactions as the sequencer does? Well, verification is actually called polylogarithmic, or log square of x. And you can see in this chart, the blue line will be the effort of the Starknet node processing transactions, one by one. And the yellow line will be the effort of the Ethereum validators verifying the proof. It's polylogarithmic. So the bigger the complexity, the bigger the gap there is between the effort of the node proposing the new block and the nodes being convinced that that is actually the real new state, just to verifying the cryptographic proof. So the bigger this gap, the bigger the scaling of the system, right? Because this is all the work that they don't have to do. Only one machine has to do. All the other machines, they only do this effort. So you can see visually here what you gain. And this is only the base case scenario. When you add on top of that more advanced topics, like for example, proof recursion that we actually haven't started, that gap is even wider. So the system is way more efficient. I think if I click here, it just takes you to, yeah, I think it's just the same chart that you can verify yourself. So what I'm going with this is that validity proof is to computation, while zip is to file size. It is a type of compression, but instead of compressing file size, you're compressing computation. That is what validity proof does, and that is how we actually achieve this high TPS on the network, a very cheap price. Romain has a question. Is the proof sent into the block, or is it somewhere else? The proof is sent, the process of, this is two-stage process. You have a sequencer. We're not going to go into the architecture in this session, but the sequencer is the one who processes transactions and put it into blocks, right? The sequencer is a node of a Starknet. And then after enough blocks have been created, a combined validity proof is created by a system called shard, which is the prover that Starknet uses. And that proof is sent to Ethereum as a transaction in Ethereum to a smart contract within Solidity called the verifier, right? That's when the validity proof gets verified. So it's a little decoupled. You have multiple blocks attested by a single validity proof sent to Ethereum for verification. So that verification happened among thousands of computers in the Ethereum network. So that's how, for example, the Starknet actually uses Ethereum as its security layer. Is that clear? Let me know, Romain. One proof for multiple blocks in a Starknet. So yes, that's how it works. Now, what's validity proof? I've been talking about that, but let's go a little bit deeper. So validity proof is a particular use case of zero-knowledge proof that is a big family of technologies. And the goal of the validity proof is to convinces a verifier on layer 1 of new layer 2 state without sharing the transaction details, right? And this is important. I don't have to give you all the details of the transaction that happened in the block that I'm proposing a new state. I only give you the proof. And that is important because that is going to have an impact on price. This is why Starknet is going to be one of the cheapest layer 2s in the market, because we don't have to provide the transaction details to layer 1 in order to get security. That is the approach that optimistic rollups actually take. It's a different path altogether with something called fraud proofs. Now, the fact that we don't provide the details of the transactions to Ethereum doesn't make the transactions on Starknet private. They are still public because we have a block explorer and everything is transparent. You can see who sends what. Maybe not the person, but you see the addresses, right? So in that regard, Starknet is very much as open as Ethereum is. So it's not private. Zero knowledge proof can be used for privacy, but that will be like a separate, let's say, goal of these set of technologies. Reducing validity proof is for scaling, for performance. Now, validity proof makes verification very efficient, what's called succinct. And this is a property that the verification is only a fraction of the execution. Because we use validity proof under the hood in the case of a Starknet, we like to call our layer 2 like a validity rollup instead of a zero knowledge rollup, because that will give the impression that it's about privacy when it's not. And an important feature is that the actual cryptographic technology that powers validity proof in a Starknet is based on what's called ZK Starks. And there's a different family of technologies compared to ZK Snarks that are used by some other competitors, which I don't know which one used what, but Starkware pioneered the technology ZK Starks that is being used on a Starknet that has some interesting properties I'm going to see later. And finally, you have very efficient proving and verification. And the efficient proving is going to be key because creating a cryptographic proof is actually very intensive in computation resources. So the more you can parallelize and make it shorter and smaller, the more you save in cost. And Starks is in the leading edge of this. So I talked briefly about Starks and Snarks, just because there's two families of zero knowledge proofs for validity rollups. So let me do like a high level comparison of the two. So I mentioned that to verify a cryptographic proof of Stark, is polylogarithmic, right? Log square of n. In the case of a Snark, it's actually constant. So it doesn't matter how big the transaction or the computation was, the effort is always the same. The size of the proof that we have to send to Ethereum for verification is actually in the order of 400 kilobytes for Starks. Well, in the case of a Snark, it's just about 300 bytes. So that is multiple orders of magnitude of differences between the two. So at this point, you might say, well, I mean, Snarks looks much better than Starks. I mean, it's content verification, it's a much smaller proof size. Why did you choose Stark to begin with? And the reason is this. Proving with a Snark-based system is more inefficient than with Stark, like by order of magnitude. And that is important because I mentioned that is where most of the resource is being spent, is in the proof creation. Another important difference is that in the case of Starks, you don't need to have a trusted setup for the system to be secure. And the trusted setup is basically a secret that is being shared between the prover and the verifier. But the issue is that if that secret gets leaked, anyone can create a fake proof that's going to pass verification. So that is a weakness of any system based on ZK Snarks. That is not an issue with ZK Starks. There's no trusted setup at all. The other benefit of Starks is that they're deemed to be quantum secure, meaning that even when powerful quantum computers comes online, they won't be able to break ZK Starks. They won't be able to create a fake validity proof that's going to pass as a valid one, which in the case of a Snark is not the case. It is well known that they're actually going to be able to break that encryption. And this is relevant now because there's a lot of advances being made in quantum computer, and now they seem to be ever closer than ever, to the point that I think that NST is talking about deprecating elliptic curves because we know that those are vulnerable to quantum computers, and they're trying to move on to some technologies that are quantum resistant, which Starks are. Any questions so far before we move on? Okay, no questions. Good. I touched on this topic before, like why we actually use the Cairo VM and not the EVM, because there are systems that are called the CK-EVM, basically use zero knowledge technologies, but they're still EVM compatible. So why didn't we do this? Why we actually created our own virtual machine called the Cairo VM? And it's a simple reason. It's a balance, right? If you go to the router, try to support the EVM just to make able that you're compatible with all the tooling available for Ethereum or created for Ethereum, you gain compatibility, but you lose performance because the EVM was predicated on a type of our computer architecture that belongs to the previous era, right? To the era of bits and just it's bitwise operations. In the case of the era of zero knowledge computers, is based on different premises that the EVM was never meant to be used that way. So try to fit the EVM into a system based on zero knowledge proofs. You have to create a lot of abstractions and inefficiencies just for the sake of making the system compatible with the tooling that exists. We decided to go through the Cairo VM because we have a long-term vision. And the idea is that we're going to create a system, a whole tech stack that is completely custom-made and fine-tuned for zero knowledge proof from the ground up, which is going to let us to grow to the maximum capacity, to the maximum potential of these technologies. So we have, and we're showing right now, the best performance of all the layer twos. And actually, I can prove it to you. If we go to L2Beat, which tracks the statistics of multiple layer twos, and you see, where is it? Activity. Oh, Base now competing with us, but Base is optimistic rollups. But in the case of zero knowledge proofs or zero knowledge rollups, Starknet is at the top of it. So we were able to clock on average on a single day 128 TPS. That is on average. But if you go to see the peak performance on a single day, we actually got 857 TPS. That is just how much Starknet can process at its peak, which is getting really close to what Solana can do with a different set of technologies. And this is no other blockchain or no other layer 2 has been able to reach this capacity so far. So we have a lot of computing power thanks to these properties that I discussed before, and thanks to the fact that we are fully optimizing for zero knowledge proofs. Oh yeah, can you talk more about Kakarot cases? That's a good point.
Just wanted to mention that Cairo VM is a superset of so in other words, it can create a lot of different virtual machines. And in fact, there's Kakarot, which is an implementation of the EVM on Cairo. And so I think it just kind of goes to show that Cairo kind of enables creation of all different types of virtual machines. And that sort of flexibility is sort of what you need when you're wanting to build like a lot of different structures. And in this case, Kakarot is an EVM, so you can use your MetaMask wallet and interact with it like you would any other EVM.
Yeah, so the way Kakarot works is a transpiler of an EVM bytecode to Starknet bytecode, sorry, to Cairo bytecode. So even though now you can use all the tooling that you have available for Ethereum, you can use it on a Starknet just because you have this translation layer happening at runtime. And you have access to all the liquidity and all the system deployed to Starknet, even though you're using all the tools and deploying Solidity smart contracts.
Masterlab is also working on you being able to use Rust natively in on Starknet. I just dropped a link to that too. So in the future, we should be able to use all the crates libraries on Starknet too.
Well, Alexander is asking, what is the maximum possible TPS? I wonder if Casey or Okay, you have any answer to that?
I know that there's been some stress testing via a video game that was built to test this called the Flippy Flop. And I'm not sure what I believe that 800, what was it, 800 something TPS was the peak?
Yeah, this one right here. So this is the stress test we did in mainnet. That doesn't mean that it's the max capacity of the technology. We are continually improving the technology. We have a whole roadmap of improvements. And our goal is to actually get way beyond this. This is just the beginning. You can go to the roadmap. I wonder which one is the
If
updated
you
one.
over
Sorry?
developers, over developers.
Developers
That
roadmap.
one.
Yeah,
I
put it
think
here.
February there's an upgrade that should push us to over 1,000 plus. We kind of like it's still TBD, but we should get over 1,000 plus. And Starknet is working on increasing it like almost every time.
Yeah, we got staking recently. Today, this was actually deployed to testnet, so transaction cost dropped significantly just today. And then the next set of updates is gonna come in February next year. You have stateful compression, L2 gas, try catch, Cairo native. This is a very important for performance. It's gonna give us a big boost as well, maybe a 10x or maybe even more. So you can check it out. This is a whole lot of improvements coming up. So really what we are competing against is Solana, not even other layer 2 at this point. Sergio's asking, is Kakarot able to interact with Bitcoin? I wonder you guys have, Casey, you know more about Kakarot? Do you know anything about that?
I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of research that Starkware is doing in order to enable proofs to be settled on Bitcoin, but that's still sort of a work in progress.
Yeah, I'm working on
Yeah,
like
I
a
think,
project called.
go ahead, okay.
I'm contributing to a project called Shinigami where you can write Bitcoin scripts and with Cairo, and it's going to be compiled to Cairo Chasm, so you can be able to prove that. But we're waiting for like opcode to be implemented on Bitcoin, so we can have like Starknet verifier deployed on Bitcoin, and then that will be possible. But Kakarot should not be able to do that right now. I don't know in the future if that will work, but once Opcard is implemented on Bitcoin, we should kind of be able to now work on like sending proofs of computation onto Starknet or settling on Bitcoin.
Yeah, there's a whole effort of settling, being able to settle Starknet not only on Ethereum, but also to be able to settle on Bitcoin. Meaning being able to sell a validity proof to Bitcoin and being able to be verified using Bitcoin script. This actually requires for the Bitcoin community to reintroduce an opcode that existed in the past and was removed. It's called OPCAT. And we actually have a testnet showing that this is possible, and which means that if that ever gets approved, Starknet will be the first layer 2 has a dual settlement process, and that will also give us native Bitcoin on Starknet instead of wrapped Bitcoin, which has some security problems. Yeah, the OPCAT, that is the code that we are looking for to get. I mean, the community of Bitcoin needs to discuss it, obviously.
And with Shinigami, I just dropped a link there. We can still verify the proof of Bitcoin execution already on already. So if you look at the Coinbase, so if you scroll down, you see that you can run the script to verify Bitcoin's transaction with the Bitcoin ID. That works already.
Oh, okay. So this is what's been using the testnet of
this and there's another thing called Raito, which is the execution engine that they're using in testnet right now.
Cool. So this is only possible because of Starks. You cannot do this with Snarks on Bitcoin. Alexander is asking, Solana processes around 4K transactions per second. I'm curious how many TPS can Starknet handle? Understand the record for Starknet was around 800 TPS, but are there any calculations or projections for its maximum capacity? I mean, the only metric that matters is what you can see on mainnet, right? Any lab controlled test is not going to tell you much. You need to see a real case scenario. So that peak that I showed you before, the 857, was users playing a game called Flippy Flop for a whole day like crazy. We were all just trying to push and try to actually break the limits of what Starknet was able to handle. So it was a real world scenario. Solana can process 4K, but is that transactions plus bots or just transactions? I'm not sure. But with all the improvements that we have planned, or now until maybe mid next year, I think we're gonna be at that level because we're just pushing 1K and we have updates that we know are gonna give us between a 10 or 100x improvements. Ratio, what ratio? This is Bitcoin stick client return in Cairo. Interesting. Okay, a lot of good information. Thank you. Okay. All right, I wanted to make some comparison about optimistic rollups and ZK rollups or validity rollups like a Starknet. Talking about the layer one finality, right? On Ethereum, finality is meant to be about 6 minutes, right? That's the time that a block is considered to be completely final. It cannot be modified. In the case of an optimistic rollup, when you want to withdraw assets from the rollup to layer one to Ethereum, you actually have to wait about a week for that to be considered to be settled. That it's not reversible. In the case of a Starknet, that is about 5 hours. That is the time, as I mentioned, we produce multiple blocks, and then once in a while, we combine them into a single validity proof that we send to Ethereum. Well, that is every 5 hours, more or less, and we send this validity proof. So that is the layer one finality. That's how long you will have to wait to withdraw assets from Starknet to Ethereum if you're only using the base protocol. There are some services that allow you to speed up by doing some economic modeling. But the layer two finality, basically meaning how much you have to wait for a transaction to be approved, right? From a user perspective, is about 10 seconds on average, which we're planning to lower to about 2 seconds in one of the updates in the roadmap. You can see scheduled for next year. Nico is saying, Solana generate lots of transactions by single user action. Deploy a new contract. Wait, to deploy a new contract is 300 transactions? No validation, also generate transactions. All right, so there's a lot of transactions that actually they cannot be mapped apples to what Starknet is doing. It will be interesting to try to find a metric where we can compare Solana real transactions, not just, I don't know how to say it, like actual interactions with the network, compared to what layer two are able to do. That will be more a fair comparison. But I don't know much about Solana to actually make a fair comparison myself. Nico says that includes failed transactions too. Okay, interesting. Thank you for the clarification. All right, I showed this before. She also this as well. About the fees. Right now, if you go to Grow the Pie, you can see the cost of transaction fees for multiple layer twos. You can see that right now, at least the last that I was able to check, is about 2 cents per transaction on the Starknet. And just today, a new update was deployed to Starknet that's going to reduce this by 5x. It's just we need to wait until tomorrow where we can see the impact of this update. So probably we are below the sub-cent transaction cost. So it's super, super cheap. Okay, to summarize this section, so why Starknet? First of all, it's a whole tech stack optimized for zero-knowledge technology, which give you more computing power by paying less in gas fees. It is secured by ZK Starks plus Ethereum, so we send the ZK Stark to Ethereum to be verified. It has a very powerful programming language in Cairo. I mentioned that Cairo can be used to create a smart contract for a Starknet, or can be used on its own to create its own programs outside of Starknet as well. The technology that underpins Starknet, is all this zero-knowledge technology, has been in production for, I think, more than 2 years at this point, maybe 3 years, because it is the same tech stack that we started to pioneer with the StarkX back in the day. So we have secured about $1 trillion in transactions so far. So it's a really battle tested technology on mainnet. And you can withdraw assets. This is outdated, this slide. Let me just make sure that I make it up to date, because it's not 10 hours, it's about 5. 1 second, I just don't. Just so you get the information, is 3 years. Let me just refresh this. All right, this is the right information. You can withdraw assets to layer 1 in about 5 hours. You can use the base protocol. You can use another services that gives you this much faster if you need to by paying a fee. And important, there's no trusted setup involved. The system is extremely secure. All right, we have covered the first half hour of the session. Let's have a 10-minute break. Let's get some coffee, a washroom break. See you back in 10 minutes. I'm just gonna put a counter here so you know how much time is left. Okay, we are back. Hopefully you had a chance to a little break. Diego is asking, is there a Notion where I can see the slides or bootcamp resources? I'm looking into my email, but I don't have anything. Yes, Dio Liam just shared the slides, so that's the slides. Thank you, Dio. Pavel is saying, can we already use Kakarot for deploying and scaling existing EVM contracts to Starknet blockchain? And does Starknet already have an EVM compatibility? I don't know if Kakarot is actually live on mainnet. I don't think so yet.
It should be ready in December, I think, but there are some projects already out. So if you click on ecosystem, you see Akubo and a couple of ones. Is it ecosystem? Yeah, discover ecosystem. If you click on that, you should see the projects that tested it out. Some already are, but it should be ready in about a month or in Q1.
Is that available on testnet? Maybe can people give it a try?
Some people you can test out some projects on testnet, but I think they mentioned it should be ready at the end of the year or in Q1.
So coming soon. An interesting thing is that with Kakarot now users are able to use Ethereum wallets to interact with the Starknet applications. So no need to install a custom specific wallet for Starknet. I think that the integration that we described here, right, by Kubo, that you can use MetaMask on a Kubo. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, I know. They shared screenshots of the development. They can, but it's not yet public yet.
Oh, okay, they're working on that. So that's
but
what I saw. Maybe there's a screenshot showing that.
yeah, they showed a screenshot and I think a video just showing like that work in progress, and it's working. But I think there's still some things that ironing out, but should be ready by next month or in Q1.
The beauty of Kakarot as an EVM layer is that it's very easy to keep up to date with changes to the EVM standard on Ethereum, because it's just a matter of adding more code to the smart contract on a Starknet that actually is doing the transpilation. There's no need to make changes to the Starknet protocol to support changes in the EVM protocol or structure or the inner workings, or to support new opcodes from the EVM. All right, back to the slides. We were smart wallets. Okay, so at this point, you probably know about Ethereum wallets, right? So what is a smart wallet? Why do we call it that way on Starknet? So for us, a smart wallet is a wallet that you can sign transactions using Touch ID or Face ID on your phone, or you can, for example, execute multiple operations in a single transaction. Think about this normal process that you have to approve the use of some tokens before you can swap them, right? That is the normal operations on Ethereum. In the case of a Starknet, you can combine those two operations into a single transaction, so you only sign it once. And on a Starknet, every single wallet is a smart wallet. We call it that way because there are no externally owned accounts, which is like the common type of wallet on Ethereum. And because all these wallets are used, let's say, a process or a type of technology called account abstraction. That is what allows this level of flexibility and additional functionality that you cannot find in any other wallet. Two of the top providers for wallets are Argent and Bravos. The links are here, so you can take a look. They both provide a browser extension, but also a mobile wallet. This is the case of Argent, and this is the case of Bravos. We're going to be showing you today how to create a wallet with Bravos in particular, but feel free to explore Argent as well and choose the one you like the most. So some of the things that you can do with a smart wallet is that you can have complex interactions, because sometimes an action requires multiple steps, or what we call user operations. This is an example that I mentioned before, typical for DeFi, where you have to approve the use of some tokens before you can actually do something with them. So let's say you have this approach, right? You have to do 2 steps on a single process, the approve and the transact. So you would expect that because you send 2 transactions in certain order, because there are 2 steps, you would expect maybe that they get included in the same block, one after another, with nothing in between. But the reality is that it doesn't work that way. There's no guarantee that they're going to be executed or bundled in that way. They could be bundled in the same block, but maybe with something in between, other transaction from some other person. Or it could happen that they actually get included in 2 different blocks, right? The only guarantee will be the order. Step 1 will happen before step 2 because of the nonce. But this opens the door for a type of economic attack that is called MEV, maximum extractable value, where you have pretty much bots trying to insert transactions in between your transactions in a way to extract some money out of you. This is very common in DeFi protocols, something you have to be mindful of sometimes, especially when there's low liquidity. You can lose a little bit of money, or you can lose a lot of money with this type of economic attack. And this is, at this point, it's just bots and it's completely automated. Now, when you have something like multi-call on a Starknet with the small wallets, what happens is that when you have to perform multiple steps to perform a single operation, you can actually bundle them into a single transaction. So now you have the guarantee that when that bundle gets included into a block, it gets included in that order in the same block and with nothing in between, nothing in the middle. So now there's no chance that, this scenario is not going to happen. It's not going to happen that it's included in 2 different blocks. And it also limits the surface attack of MEB. It doesn't eliminate that completely, because you can still be front run. That means include a transaction before your bundle takes place. So MEB can still be extracted, but some types of attacks, they actually get mitigated thanks to that. But the main benefit is that actually transactions become much cheaper that way, because there's less overhead, especially when you have to bundle multiple operations into a single transaction. I very often play this game Influence, and I can see the benefit of multi-call when you have, 10 processes finished, and instead of having signed one by one as independent transaction, I can finish them all in a single sweep. And so that's a single transaction. So it's much cheaper and much faster as well to do it that way. Daniel Emanuel is asking, Starknet takes account abstraction to a whole other level, like sweeper bots. I don't know what sweeper bots, but they are called in Ethereum searchers. I think the bots looking for extract MEB. And then you have a protocol called flash bots, which is about constructing the block in a certain way. This is a more complex topic that I want to get too deep into it. Check out the cartridge controller for maximum account abstraction. Yeah, that's a very good one. That's another type of wallet. I never know how to spell cartridge correctly, so let's see if I get it right this time. No. Yes, this one. Yeah, I think this is a wallet that is very neat. That is the one that we use for the flippy flop stress test, and is great in multiple sense. I think it's mostly geared toward gaming, but probably can be used in different scenarios as well. I'm gonna put it, put the link. Great. I'll put the link here. So controller. There's another type of wallet, mostly for gaming, that you can integrate into your projects. All right, back here. So account abstraction at a high level, what it means is just a decoupling of the role of the signer and the role of the account. Because in an externally owned account, as you have on Ethereum, those 2 roles are merged into a single role. So the signer is the thing, could be the device, could be the entity that signs transactions. Okay, only deal with signing transactions. And it's identifies a user through a private key. And then you have the account, And the account is actually a smart contract deployed on a Starknet, which is the one that actually holds the assets of a users and verified signatures. So those assets can only be controlled by a particular signer that's be identified by its signature. And in the account, the smart contract is the one that actually executes all these transactions as a bundle using multi-call, and it's the thing that gives you these all other features. That's why these the smart wallets are so powerful and flexible, because you can actually define them programmatically. You can define what are the features they have. It's not set in stone by the protocol. Even the way you verify the signature can be configured. So it's very easy to have guardians for recovery or multi signatures or stuff like that, more advanced use cases. Now, in practice, account abstraction, this is how it works. Let's say you want to execute a transaction, right, to interact with certain smart contract on a target. Let's say you have the wallet installed on your phone. So in your device, in a special security system called the secure enclave, you will have your signer, right? Identified with a private key that is unique to you. So when you want to interact with a smart contract, what you do, basically you will need to have deploy a special type of smart contract that is called the account contract. And it's special because it has to follow certain interface. This is smart contract to be considered an account contract. This interface is defined by a standard called the SNP6. I don't want to get too deep into that, but it has three main functions. It shows the execute, the way you execute transactions, the validate to validate signatures, and an external function for dApps to validate signatures as well. So what happens is that if you want to interact with this target contract, you're going to send like a type of transaction called the invoke transaction to your account contract. Your account contract is going to validate that you actually the entity or the person can control the assets. And if it is that correct, it's going to go to the execute phase and actually talk to the target smart contract that you initially wanted to talk to and do the operation you want to perform. So that's in a nutshell what is account abstraction. Separation of the signer from the account, and the account works as the intermediary between you and your target smart contract. So I mentioned that signature verification is very flexible because you can program its logic on the account contract. And that enables features like, for example, having a single signer, which is the most common feature, or having a multi-sig, or having a hardware signer that you can use. You can sign transactions using hardware directly on your phone, which is much more secure than signing transactions with software. You can have social recovery in case you lose access to your seed phrase or your wallet. Your friends and family can actually perform off-chain authentication of you and give you access back to your own wallet. Or you can have session keys where you can play a game on-chain, and instead of having to sign every transaction, the game client itself, you delegate some access to your account, so it will sign transactions for you, so you can just focus on playing the game and you forget about a wallet popping up every time. It also means that you can use different elliptic curves for this pair of signing transactions with a private key. You can use the Stark-friendly curve, which is the native to Starknet, but you can also use the elliptic curve used by Ethereum if you want to use a ledger, for example. Or you can use the standard elliptic curve, the one that your phone uses. So it gives you a wide range of options about how to sign transaction. So I mentioned that when you combine account abstraction with your phone, you're able to use the secure enclave, which is a secure subsystem that every modern smartphone and every modern laptop actually have. So in a way, you will turn your smartphone into a hardware wallet. So what happens is that in any smartphone, there's a shared system where most of your app lives, that has the main CPU and the RAM is shared between all these systems. But then you have a smaller subsystem that is a dedicated processor and dedicated memory just for critical functions. And those critical functions can be, for example, generate random numbers, which is a very important function that any app requires, especially to create new private keys. It will handle all the different keys that you will have on your phone for different purposes, different private keys. You are able to sign transaction using hardware directly, so it's hardware accelerated, and it will use this particular curve that is supported by Starknet. And that is the subsystem that actually is controlled by the keychain, by Touch ID, and by Face ID. So it has a very high security guarantees, And a kind of abstraction is able to take advantage of using this system for signing transactions instead of using this system, which is what MetaMask will use when you install it on your phone. This system is much more vulnerable than this system. So this is what I mean that turns your phone almost into a hardware wallet, because now you're able to use the secure aspect of a modern device. Now, in different providers, they have different name for this. I call it secure enclave, but that is the name for Apple devices. If you're using a Google phone, it's called Titan M. If you have a Samsung device, it's actually called Knox. And any other ARM device is called Trust Zone. So depending on what you have, there's some secure enclave just with different name in your system. It also applies for laptops as well. So that's why if you go to Bravos, for example, I'm going to show you later, you can sign transactions with Touch ID, use a secure enclave, or you can set transactions with fingerprint on your laptop as well, which is using the secure enclave of your laptop. So a kind of 2FA. So to summarize about smart wallets, they give you much better UX than regular wallets because you have all these new use cases. You have things like multi-call, hardware signer, social recovery, session keys. All this is enabled by account abstraction, is this separation, this decoupling of the signer and the account contract. And an account contract is just a special smart contract on a Starknet that follows a specific interface that I mentioned before, the execute, the validate, and this valid signature. It supports signing transactions with different elliptic curves. I mentioned that even the Ethereum one is supported, but also the standard and the Stark friendly. And every smart wallet on Starknet is a smart wallet. There are no externally owned accounts. There's no distinction between those two. Anyone is asking, are there no implementations to integrate MPC wallet? Do you have any knowledge of this case? You're okay. MPC wallets.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
I've heard of MPC wallets. I don't use it, but I think they might be supported, but don't quote me on that. You will have to do some research there. Okay. Any other questions before we move on to next step? Okay. So next step, I'm going to show you how to create a wallet on your phone and then how to actually connect it to the browser extension so you can have the same one in both devices. I'm going to be using Bravos, but feel free to also explore Argent on your own. So we're going to basically 5 steps. We're going to install the Bravos mobile app. We're going to create a new account with 2-factor authentication. Basically, it's going to use the secure enclave of your phone to secure every transaction. You're going to then install Bravos as a browser extension, and we're going to import the seed phrase. So you can control dApps both on your phone and on your browser. And then you're going to be able to claim a SPOC for completing session 1. So the SPOC is like an NFT that attests that you participated in session 1 of Basecamp. You will also have a SPOC at the end of Basecamp, but it's a different SPOC for graduate or attendee or cum laude graduate, depending on the requirements that you successfully completed. So let me move this on the side for a moment. Oops, disappear. Give me a second that it just disappeared completely. Oh, there you are. Okay. Minimize. Let me try to bring up my phone so I can show you step by step how this will work. Oops. Minimize. All right, here's my phone. You can see it, right? Casey, okay, you can see my smartphone? Yeah, cool. Okay, so we're gonna go to the store. In my case, I have an old Android device. You're gonna go to the Play Store. You can go to the App Store if you have an iPhone. You can search for the Bravos with double A, Starknet wallet. By the way, you need to have the wallet to claim the spot, so make sure to follow the steps. So this is the one we're gonna use, Bravos Starknet wallet. I'm just gonna install it. Perfect. I have it installed. So I'm just gonna open it now. And I'm gonna click create a new wallet. You have to give it a password. This password is to unlock the wallet, whatever name. Make sure you have enabled this option to unlock your wallet with your biometrics. So you will have to provide your Touch ID or Face ID to unlock the wallet. It's much more convenient. So I click next. Make sure that you back up the seed phrase. I'm not going to do it here, but do it later. For now, I'm just going to click copy just to be able to continue. And click I save my secret recovery phrase. Make sure you do it on paper and you put it somewhere. You click next. Next step is that make sure to enable this 2FA hardware signer, right? So this is basically saying, I want to sign transactions using the secure enclave of my phone. I want the maximum security. So every time you want to execute a transaction, you will have to confirm with your fingerprint or your Face ID, which is basically two-factor authentication. So it's a much more secure system than a traditional EOA. You click next. And that's it. We have a wallet. So what happened under the hood is that actually, you don't have any activities yet? How come? Well, while we wait for this to update, I'm just gonna change the name of this wallet so I don't have no confusion. We go to the top right, you go to account settings, and I'm gonna call this mainnet wallet. Whoop, oh my God, I didn't know this was possible. Okay. Mainnet wallet, because we're also gonna create one for testnet, so I know which one is which. So this wallet, this is the address of the wallet right here. We're gonna copy it. And I can go to a blog explorer, and hopefully we will be able to see the wallet. If I go to Starkscan, for example, search for it, it's not showing up yet. It might take a while to be deployed. Say the options, deposit either star, set up your wallet on chain. Not allowing me to do that. Okay, it's asking us to have some star tokens, which we don't have. So we'll have to fund the wallet to be able to deploy it, because the next step will be to set up the account chain. Basically, it's the account contract that is connected to every wallet. Is that a smart contract Starknet? You will need to deploy it. But for deploy, you need to pay for gas fees. But you have the wallet, so if you fund it, and if you do any transaction, the first thing the wallet will do will be to deploy this account contract for you under the hood. So you don't have to do it manually if you don't want to. You can also, for development purposes, you can go to networks and you can switch to the test networks, because we're going to need a wallet for Sepolia. That's the name of the testnet on Starknet. We click proceed, and it's going to create a new account, but for the testnet. So I'm going to give it a name so I know which one we're using. Account settings. Let's call this one testnet wallet. Confirm. So in this scenario, because it's a testnet wallet, we can actually get test ETH for the deployment, right? And you can click this link. I think that's the one that is going to give you to a faucet. Let's go, for example, let's get ETH from Blast, right? You can get ETH or Stark. Let's get ETH. And is the wallet connected? Can I connect the wallet? Well, I'll have to provide the wallet here. Can I connect? No. Well, copy the address here and just paste it there. Paste the wallet address, verify that I'm a human, and click. Just to get some test ETH for paying fees, we can deploy the wallet and we can use this to interact with the testnet. So this one went through. Brian, no, you will need to use either Bravos or Argent for Basecamp. Those are the wallets for Starknet. You cannot yet use, oh, well, you can use MetaMask with snaps, but it's a little more complicated, but you're gonna use the Coinbase wallet on Starknet. So if this actually works, we have now some test ETH that you can see here, 0.025. So because we have some ETH to pay for gas fees, we can now go to this next process or next step is to deploy, set up your account on chain. So we just click deploy. This is slow charging, yeah, whatever. Okay, close. So we deploy the account contract. We're not going to set up 2FA for the testnet wallet. We're going to keep it simple. Make sure you enable that for the mainnet wallet, but for this one, no. Let's keep it as simple as possible. So now the setup is complete in theory. So to verify that, you can copy the wallet address. You can go to a block explorer like Starknet or Voyager. Make sure you switch to Sepolia, not to mainnet. That's where that's a testnet. And if we search for it, you can see that the account contract was deployed, right? You can see our balance, and you can see the read-write contract. You can see the function that I mentioned before, right? Like there's a bunch of functions, but is that right? Yeah, the validate, the execute. These are the ones that from the SNP 6, right? The public interface that account contract should have. So we have the wallet set up on our phone. So let's now import this wallet into our browser so we can use it either in one of the two of them. So to do that, you can go to your browser and you will have to install an extension. So where's extensions? Extensions. So you can search for Bravo's Starknet wallet. In this case, I'm using Brave, but it's also available for Chrome and for Firefox, I would imagine. You add to Brave. Question from Alexander. Where do I get the testnet tokens? Okay, give you the link to the faucet. There are multiple faucets. That's one of them. Make sure to get ETH. You can get both ETH and Stark, but the ETH is the most widely supported right now for development purposes. For mainnet, you can use either one. They work fine. Martin, if it's not working for you, try looking for Argent and do the setup with Argent instead. Just try a different wallet. All right, so I have now the extension here enabled, right? So I'm not going to create a new wallet. I'm just going to import a wallet, the one that I have on my phone. So I'm going to click import wallet. It's going to ask me for my seed phrase. So we're going to have to make it visible. Don't ever do this when you share the screen. I'm just going to do it because I'm going to nuke this wallet after we finish. So I'm going to click show recovery phrase. It's asking me for the Touch ID. I'm going to copy. I'm going to paste it. Click next. And I give it a password to unlock the extension. There you go. So it's trying to recover the accounts we created there. So it has been recovered. It started, blah, blah, blah. Let's switch to Sepolia because it's the one we're going to use for us developers. And you can see that is the same wallet. We're not going to set up this for testnet, just for make it simple. It ends with 9056, which is the same one that we have here, 9056. And you can see we have the same balance. So now these two wallets are connected to each other. And we're going to be able to use it to later on, as we continue working on the project, you might be able to use it. Cool. Okay, the only thing I'm wondering, and this is something that I was surprised, is that when you go to mainnet, the wallet didn't automatically deploy the account contract. I was expecting it to do that, but instead it's asking you to put some ETH and Stark on it to deploy. So we'll need to bridge some Starks. Cool, so that's the wallet setup. So the next thing we're gonna do now is actually we're gonna do two things. I'm going to show you how to set up your dev environment so you're ready for session 2 with Okai. You have the whole setup working out. And we're going to now jump to basically VS Code. So let me close here the phone. I'm going to open my terminal. And let me bring back the browser. They close the browser. It's here. Okay, let me just minimize this. Let me close a bunch of things. Romain, do you have a question? You have your hand raised. Let me know. I can give you the microphone to ask a question. All right. Small. Give me a second to prepare here. All right, cool. Perfect. Let's make this very big. Oops. Okay. So we're going to create a folder for all the code I'm going to be building during Basecamp. So I'm going to call it, this is my terminal. I'm just going to create a folder called sn_workshop. Okay. Make sure to use underscore just because in Cairo we're going to follow the ROS convention where we don't use hyphens, we use underscore to separate, like it's called a snake case. So because this is going to be the name of our package. So we create the folder and we go and cd into it. Okay. So now I can actually open VS Code in this folder. Wow, this font size. Let's open VS Code, code dot. All right. Gigantic size. Perfect. So right now it's completely empty. What I want us to do is I want us to make sure, first of all, that you have this extension called dev container. This one. Make sure you have this extension installed on your VS Code, because what this is going to allow us, it's going to allow us to use a Docker image basically to launch an instance of VS Code instead of a container that's going to have all the dependencies or all the binaries they're going to need as developers for Starknet. So install that extension on your VS Code. Also, make sure that you have Docker running on your computer. Here's mine, proof that it's running. We're going to use Docker. And we're going to be using also a specific image that I'm going to show you the name. This image right here. I'm going to use this image. So Docker image, I'll put it in the chat. And this image has image for Cairo development that includes Rust, includes Starglide, which is a CLI to interact with the Starknet, includes a Scarp, which is a package manager for Cairo, Starknet Foundry for testing, and a Starknet DevNet to run like a local version of the blockchain, of the Starknet blockchain on your computer. Right? It has all of that in the latest version ready to go. So go back to my VS Code if I can find it again. All right, so I have the containers. I'm gonna put your hand down, Romain. In case you have a question, let me know. Move back to the code, close this. I'm gonna create a new file, a configuration file for dev container. And that file has to be called .devcontainer.json. That's the configuration file for the extension. And in here, we're gonna define as a JSON what's gonna be the name of the image. You're just gonna call it any name, call it dev, call it whatever you want. False is asking, what's the name of the VS Code extension? The name is dev container. Dev containers is by Microsoft. Make sure you have it installed. Okay. This is the name of, I think, the container probably. Now we're going to tell him which image we want to use, right? So now we're going to use the actual image that I showed you before, right? This one here. Starknet DevNet, Starknet Foundation, Starknet DevNet, that has all the dependencies. I'm going to put it here. You're going to use the latest version of that, right? Because we have, it changes whenever a new version of Scarp is out. I'm going to save the file. And now I'm going to tell the VS Code through the extension to relaunch VS Code, but now inside this container or a container of this image. To do that, I normally click, you go to Command Palette or Command Shift P, and you will see an option called Dev Container. So you can search for it. dev container, and it's called rebuild and reopen in container. Okay, so when you do that, it's gonna download the image, it's gonna build it, and it's gonna eventually launch VS Code inside that container. So this VS Code you see is running in the container, and the way to prove it is that now if I open the terminal, I can do scarp version, and the scarp is there. I can do Starknet version, and the Starknet is there. I can do Starknet devnet version, version, and it's there. What else? SMForge, the test suite. So we can verify that we have all the dependencies available for us in the integrated terminal. Which command of the dev containers? So go to view command palette and then search for, I mean, it doesn't show up here, but it was called reopening container. Forgot the name. Let me try again. Let me try again. I close it so I can show you. If I open this, you go to view command palette and rebuild and reopening container. That is the option you'll need to do. And this is the content of the dev-container.json file. It has to be called .devcontainer.json, right? So it can be picked up by the extension. And it's using the image that I just shared with you that we prepared for this workshop that has all these dependencies with the latest version available to use. Cool. All right. So okay, I need to reopen this in the container because I'm outside. Let's do it. Okay, so now we can create a project for Starknet. And we do that by using Scarp. Scarp is like the package manager, but it's also have a handy CLI that you can initialize a project, Scarp init. And you have two options for the test suite. You can use the Cairo test, or you can use the Starknet Foundry. So Cairo test, if you plan to use a project using like vanilla Cairo, like using Cairo outside of the Starknet, but the Starknet Foundry is the preferred test runner for testing the smart contracts on a Starknet. So we use that one, Starknet Foundry. And it's going to go ahead and fetch a bunch of data, do some compilation. So let's wait until it finishes. But notice that it creates some files, right? So besides the dev container that we created, now we have a scar.toml. And this is the configuration file for a Starknet, similar to cargo.toml, where you have like the name of the package, which version, which edition, which version of the Starknet we're using. I think this is the latest still. Foundry is available, a bunch of things. Things to notice is that no syntax highlighted here, right? It's a little hard to read. Second, we also create some like a initial version of a smart contract. This one in Cairo, again, no syntax highlighting, impossible to read. And it has some initial tests just for you to verify that it's working. So before I do something about the syntax highlighted, just let me verify that everything is working out fine, that everything is just wired up correctly by trying to run this default test that it comes with. And you run the test by using the scarp test. So it's going to do some extra compilation, which is going to take a while, but you only have to do it once. When you run tests at the next time, you don't have to do this whole compilation. It's just the first time to Foundry to finish the setup. Make sure that to get that out of the way. And I can answer any questions you have in the meantime. Well, she's asking, and then what you run when you press Control Shift P? Dev container. Yeah, it's not showing up here just because I'm inside the container. I will have to exit and show you, but I hate to wait until this finishes. If someone else can provide the answer, help. Yeah, Daniel, if you want Fauci to see the message, make sure to use the option to everyone in the chat using host and panelists so he cannot see it. Yeah, it's rebuild and reopen. That's the command. Yes, there's going to be a short quiz right after we finish this setup. 5 questions only. Dios, you say that you're still stuck reading the dev container configuration. That's because it's just downloaded the image. And the image is like 600 megabytes. I already had the image downloaded in my computer. That's why it's so fast. Yours is just downloaded and building the image. I did that before. So that's why it's taking longer. But again, that's only once that it will take longer. After that, it's going to be very fast. Still compiling. All right, now it's running the tests. And it passed, right? So it had 2 tests that it came with, and they passed. And you can see that as part of the process, it actually built the application, and this is the output of the build, all these files. So when you deploy a smart contract, as you're going to be in session 2, you're going to be actually deploying one of these files to testnet. So I mentioned that we have a couple of issues. One is that we don't have syntax highlighting, right? So let's fix that by modifying the dev container file, right? Because now we're going to tell the extension to not only load VS Code inside this container, but also to enable certain extensions by default. And we do that by having a new key called customizations. And inside of that, we have one called VS Code. And inside one, we have called extensions. Here, we're going to enable 2 extensions. The first one is to have syntax highlighted for Cairo. The extension is called starkware.cairo1. Make sure the 1 is there because there is an older extension for Cairo 0. That there's an older version of the language. You don't want that one. You want the Cairo 1. And we also want syntax highlighted for the tumble file. That one is tamas.even better tumble. Wait, tamas even better tumble. Yes, that's the name. So those 2 extensions. I'm gonna leave it there for a moment so you can copy my configuration, starkware.cairo1 and tamasfe even better tumble. I can also paste it there in the chat if you want. So we're gonna have to relaunch this container with this new configuration. So again, to the command palette, now I call I run the command rebuild container. So it's gonna do this again, but with the new configuration. Oh, you can copy it from the chat. Okay, you're gonna have to copy manually from here. It's gonna leave it there I mean, you're gonna have to write it manually. So it's not that long. I'm gonna rebuild this container. If it's working fine, first of all, if I open the .toml file, we should have an extension, but it's not showing the syntax highlighting. Why not? But the Cairo one is working. So I'm thinking that I made a mistake with the name of the toml extension. Let me double check. Thomas. Oh, yes. Even better toml. That's it. I was missing an N. So I'm going to click rebuild. Just give me right away the option to rebuild. So now the scar.toml actually has syntax highlighter and Cairo as well. Perfect. I'm going to do a small change just because I had an issue yesterday when I was doing a workshop with this. I'm going to change the prelude. Give me a small second. What is the prelude that I want to use? Cairo. counter workshop. Second, just trying to find what is the right configuration. Yeah, I'm gonna change this edition to a slightly older one just because I have a small issue last time trying to get dependencies. You see? Storage pointer read access, storage pointer write access. Oh, that's the one I was missing yesterday. Okay, no, that's fine. Leave it like that. Now we know that this is what I need to. Anyway, just note for myself. Cool. I'm gonna remove this file because with Okai, you're gonna build a whole new one in the next session. But I'm also gonna remove this test, right? Because with Thomas, you're gonna build your own test suite for that particular smart contract. So we don't need those default files. So that's it. That's all the setup you need to have a professional Cairo developer setup. Charles CM is asking, can we get the recordings of the session? Yes, probably tomorrow. I posted on the Discord server on the Basecamp channel, so you will see it there. Alexander says, when I rebuild and reopen, I get the error no WSL distribution found. Oh, you're on Windows. If you're on Windows, I think you might need to install first WSL. That's why. WSL is a way to run like a Linux instead of Windows. Okay, any question about this? I'll be pushing this initial code to our repository that I shared before, to this one. So maybe I can do it now. Git commit, okay, sure. Let's do it now. So anything to the git ignored that need to be added? I think we're fine. Git. Is there a git? Well, I'll make sure to push it. Oh, okay. I need to be outside the container. That's actually the end of session 1. One thing that I want to mention is that as soon as you close the Zoom client, you're gonna get a feedback form that for us is super valuable to know how we did and to improve for the next session. So please give us your feedback. And that's it. Thank you very much. I'll see you all again next Wednesday when Okai is gonna take over and just write your first smart contract on Starknet and deploy it to testnet. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.